welcome to another episode of Claw's Corner of the Zoom edition. Today's guest is a dancer, actress, singer, author, and voiceover actor in cartoons and video games. She has over 150 credits, which include Maude, The Love Boat, 8 is Enough, Cannonball Run, Creepshow, Swamp Thing, Escape from New York, The Fog, and The Convent, just to name a few. Some of the actors that were lucky enough to share the small and big screen with her include Kurt Russell, Tom Atkins, Fritz Weaver, Hal Holbrook, B. Arthur, Conrad Bain, and Rodney Dangerfield. She has worked with some of the best directors in the business. They include John Carpenter, George Romero, Wes Craven, and Mike Mendez. She is the voice of Catwoman in the Batman cartoons and also the best-selling novelist of her autobiography, There Are Worse Things That I Could Do, which is a reference to her originating the role of Rizzo in the hit play Grease. You can also buy her fictional series, Vampires of Hollywood and Love Bites. Please welcome the woman that went from dancer to comedian to feminist to sex symbol, finally to scream queen, Adrienne Barbeau.
Thank you. Wow.
How was that?
Well, you pulled out some oldies there. 8 is enough. 8 is enough.
I went back to the archives. I grew up in the 70s and 80s watching all of that, so I've been a huge fan for years.
Well, thank you.
We're recording in the middle of the pandemic. Well, first of all, I want to thank my Uncle John, who knows you, and he helped set up this interview. So thank you, Uncle John, and I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate you being on the show. And since we're recording in the middle of the pandemic, how are you?
I'm really well, actually. I'm, knock wood, I have been able to continue doing some work, and I've been sheltering in place, and I've been protesting. The dog got my sign the other day. We have a new puppy in the house, and she came in and chewed the middle of the sign. But I've been protesting with my mask and being very careful. And for the most part, I'm good. It's a really distressing, emotional, upsetting time.
Yep, very.
Not just because of the pandemic, but the whole, what's happening in the world, in our world. But I'm keeping my head above water. I've got my boys around with me and my dogs, and I'm working. And so can't ask for any more. I'm very, very fortunate. I realize that.
I am so very happy to hear that. So I want to go back a couple of years. Let's start at the very beginning. I want to find out how you made the leap from starting in community theater to touring with the USO show.
Well, it was the community theater that had a musical comedy review. The community theater was San Jose Civic Light Opera, which even in 1962 and 63, I probably started working with them in 61, was a pretty big organization. They had a good subscriber base and a little bit of money, and I did my first musicals for them, and then they put together this musical comedy review, and we applied to the State Department, and they said, yeah, take it away. And so it was a week after I graduated high school. I got on my first plane, flew from Sacramento to Hiroshima,
wow.
Yokohama. Maybe we landed in Yokohama. Anyway, I'd never been on a plane before. And I flew right to Japan, and we spent 3 months entertaining the armed forces in what was in those days known as the Orient. Now it's Southeast Asia. We were right on the DMZ.
Wow.
We were right on the DMZ on the anniversary of the signing of the 10-year ceasefire, when the North Koreans came over the border and killed 3 of the GIs that were at one of our shows. It was a real life-changing experience for an 18-year-old who'd grown up in a white suburban household without much political affiliation.
Talk about jumping right into the fire.
Yes.
I'm never flying on an airplane. Let's go to Asia.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. I think it gave me an appreciation of the world and of other cultures and of language, and that I never would have acquired any other way.
Yeah, and I can imagine. Now, I'm sure these life experiences have made you a better actress.
Yeah, I think probably they have.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly how, but
Yeah.
you know, they're all in there, and
Yeah.
and we use ourselves. So yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, when you came back to the U.S., you started acting, and I want to talk about how you shared a dressing room with Bette Midler when the two of you performed Fiddler on the Roof together.
Yes. Yeah. Fiddler was my first Broadway show. I got into the union doing summer stock in Augusta, Michigan, one of those situations where we made $75 a week and we kicked back 35 of it to the producer. But at the end of the five months we worked, at the end of the 5 months, with only 5 days off, I had my union card. And then I was able to audition for Broadway shows. And I was hired to do Fiddler. I started out as an understudy, and then I took over the role of Huddle. And Bette was playing Seitel at the time. So we shared a dressing room for 2.5 years. It was before the Divine Miss M. She started creating her club act while we were backstage at Fiddler.
And also you worked with actor John Savage in that production, and you later worked with him in the show Carnival.
Yes, yes. So, you know, it all came full circle. John Savage and who else was in that production that I ended up working with again later? Well, John just does jump out to me. Oh, you mentioned Rodney Dangerfield. I did Back to School with Rodney.
Yes.
And of course, my scenes were just with Rodney and with Robert, I've forgotten his name, from Star Trek.
Oh, Picard. No,
Picard.
Picard. Yeah.
I just worked with the two fellas. But time came to see the movie for the cast and crew screening or everything. And I'm sitting there and the movie starts, and there is the black and white footage of Rodney as a little boy with his father, who is the tailor. And his father was Boris Aplon. And Boris had played Laser Wolf in the Broadway production of Fiddler that I did. And I mean, I had spent 2.5 years with Boris on stage, and there he was with me in a way in Back to School.
Wow. Everything goes full circle for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You worked with some great people. You had such a great career. I want to stick with Broadway for a little while, because you went on to star as the first actor ever to portray Rizzo in the hit play Grease. Tell me about that and how that came about.
Yes, you know, and it's something you may be hearing more about, because we're in the process, possibly, of writing a book about it. But how it came about for me, I just got called in to audition. I had been doing an off-Broadway show. I don't know if they knew about that or what, but I don't really remember. I just remember the first interview with the director, Tom Moore, and he asked me who my favorite musical performers were from the 50s and 60s, and I said Johnny and Joe and the Platters and the Diamonds and the Drifters.
All the classics.
Tom told me later that he didn't know a thing about that music. He was just looking to see if the actors he was interviewing were telling the truth. You know? So they called me into audition, and initially I auditioned for one of the other roles. And then I went off, it was Christmas vacation. I came to California with my boyfriend, and they called and said, listen, we'd really love to see you for Rizzo. Can you come back? And no, I mean, you know, this was 1972, an airplane ticket cost hundreds of dollars, and I wasn't working, and it was Christmas. And so I said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't. And they called again, and they said, look, if we make the audition on New Year's Eve day, could you come back? And I thought, well, if you don't want to be unemployed for the rest of your life, you better bite the bullet and fly back. And I auditioned for them New Year's Eve day, and we started rehearsals on January 2nd.
Wow. And how long did you play Rizzo? How many years?
I was only there 6 months, because Norman Lear hired me for Maude.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do that, I found this story very interesting. I'm sure my viewers will as well. Did you ever see the movie version of Grease?
No.
Why?
I never have. I was in a boutique one day, and they were playing a song that sort of sounded familiar, but it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard. And it was the movie version of There Are Worse Things I Could Do. And the approach was so different. It was sort of, if I remember correctly, I've never heard it since, but it was sort of a jazz, sort of, you know, I thought, oh, if that's what they did, I don't think I want to see this and have my memories of what we did colored, you know? I mean, the original Broadway production of Grease was very gritty. It bears no resemblance to the Grease that everyone knows now. And I loved doing it, and I loved everybody in it. And so I just didn't want to have that sullied.
No, just keep that memory the way you had it. Keep it great. Well, as we mentioned, Grease led to the great Norman Lear finding you and hiring you for Maude. That must have been, first of all, I want to talk about Norman Lear, because to me, he is probably the best TV creator. I mean, he has created so many great shows, All in the Family, Jefferson's, Maude, and all these shows, it's funny because they're so relevant now.
Yes, oh
4 years later, I'm watching reruns on Nick at Night and Tenna TV, and I'm saying, oh my God, this is so relevant.
This is what we're dealing with right now. Yeah, definitely.
He was way ahead of his time.
I remember being in the rehearsal hall when we were doing one of our first table reads, and realizing that I had just met a genius, and I had never met a genius before, but that Norman Lear was a genius at doing what he did, you know, at knowing how to make these shows work. He was just, he is still brilliant. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because he had a way of only hiring stage actors. Why was that?
Yes. Well, we shot the show like a stage production. You know, we didn't do it in little bits and pieces. We rehearsed it straight through like a one-act play, and we filmed it with an audience like a one-act play. And I think Norman knew he could trust people with stage experience to give him the goods, you know?
Which is proven it does. They have all given the goods. I mean, like I said, just the 3 shows I can think of off the bat, Jefferson's, Maude, and All in the Family. And they were all stage actors. I know you, Conrad Bain, and B. Arthur were all stage actors.
Bill Macy had been doing O Calcutta before we started. And Esther Roll had a long list of credits from theater.
Yeah.
And that was, and Rue too. I mean, we all came from the theater.
Now, originally, Norman Lear thought that you looked too young to have a 7-year-old child. What changed his mind?
He couldn't find anybody else. That's really what it was, Rich. I mean, I went in an interview, and they had already established the character. Marcia Rudd did a fantastic job in an episode of All in the Family, playing Bee's daughter. But when they decided to go to series, I think Marcia didn't want to move to the West Coast, and they may have also felt that her approach to the material was so much like Bee's that they needed a little different take. So Norman interviewed me. I went into his office and we met, and then I didn't hear anything, and then the agency came back and said, well, they just think you look too young to have a 7-year-old. Oh, okay, fine. I've got a job. I'm happy. I'll stay with Grease, And then about a month later, they showed up, and I guess they had seen a lot of actresses in LA and they couldn't find what they wanted. So they asked me to come out and audition, and I did. Very badly, by the way. I wasn't great.
So you were typecast as a comedian until your guest appearance on Quincy starring Jack Klugman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I've been typecast a lot over the years. A part of that is just the industry. I mean, you do stage, they think you're a stage actor.
Yeah.
At least in those days. That's changed, maybe. But then, you know, if you start your television career in a sitcom, then you're a comedian. You know, you do sitcoms, you can't do drama. And so it took a while for me to finally get that first dramatic role. And then the next step is, oh, you're a television actress. Now, this was in the 70s. Television actors were not hired to do films, you know. People didn't, the producers didn't think that people would pay in the theater to see someone they could see on. So it took a while to make that transition too. But yeah, Quincy, I played a rape crisis counselor. I believe it was Kim Cattrall's first television appearance too. I may be wrong, but she was very, very young, and I was counseling her, and then I got raped. It was a pretty dramatic show for Quincy.
That obviously changed the minds of the producers who saw you, said, wow, she could actually do drama as well.
Yeah, yeah. So.
You worked with John Carpenter first during the filming of his movie, Someone's Watching Over Me. Is that the first time you met him?
Someone's Watching Me, yes.
Someone's Watching Me, yes.
Yes. He called me in, I think because he had seen me on Maude, and he thought that I had the qualities that he was looking for to play Sophie in Someone's Watching Me, who was, I believe, the first gay woman in a television movie. Mm-hmm. And I got to do that. I was really happy about that.
You've done a lot. I mean, you were the first Rizzo. You're the first gay woman in a movie. I mean, you blazed the trail for so many people.
Well, I don't know about that, but and so John, you know, he called me in and interviewed me and offered me the role, and I met him doing that movie.
And the rest is history with him.
And the rest is history.
Well, you know what? There's two things I love about John's movies. One is his simplicity. Like an example would be Halloween. He's the boogeyman. He kills people. End of story. You don't have to go into explaining why he had a bad childhood like Rob Zombie did. But what I also love is that he composes the scores for many of his films. So I want to talk to you about how John, your son Cody, and your godson Daniel Davies, who is actually the son of Dave Davies of the Kinks, took his music on the road and went on tour.
Yes, yes. Actually, Daniel is John's godson. John and I had been, you know, had been separated when Daniel came to live with John. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but it was a fantastic concert. I know I was driving to the Friends and Family dress rehearsal here in LA, and I had asked Cody, I said, is your dad doing any of his vocals? Is he, because, you know, John had a band when we were back in the early 80s, the Coupe de Villes. Mm-hmm. And I love his singing, and I love the songs that he wrote in those days. And Cody said, no, it's just, you know, it's just all the movie music. And I thought, oh God, I gotta go sit through an hour and a half of electronic music. It was so exciting because our good friend David Lawrence had done all of the video work for the concert, and all of the movie themes were put to the scenes from the movies. And boy, it was an exciting night in the theater. They toured that for almost a year, I think it was, throughout Europe and here, and have just finished working on another Lost Themes album, I believe. And of course, they just finished scoring the Halloween Kills, I think is the title of the next one, which will not be coming out this Halloween because of the quarantine. And then they'll be scoring the one that comes after that. So John, it's a joy for me to watch John Cody working with his dad on stage.
And Cody does his own, doesn't he do scores for other movies as well?
He does his own music. I think you can find him on Bandcamp. Ludrium is what he releases under Ludrium. And he also scores for video games, and he keeps busy.
Yeah, I can see that. I follow them. I never had the opportunity to see them live, but I've seen plenty of things on YouTube, and I am a huge fan of it. I bought some of the music that they do together. Oh, it's great. I recommend it to all my viewers out there. You also worked with another one of my favorite directors. He's not as well known as some of the other ones, but Mike Mendez in the movie.
I'm so glad to hear you mention Mike's name. Yeah, I love The Convent. I just think it's funny. If you want a funny horror film, that's the one.
Well, he made so many. There's another movie he did called Real Killers. He just made another one with the one who played Ivan Drago.
This is not my field.
Yeah. Well, no, the reason I bring that up is
I'm not a horror fanatic.
I'm a huge. Oh yeah, I was going to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
You have so many different titles. Like I said, Scream Queen, Feminist, Sex Symbol. You're not really a big horror fan at all, are you?
I don't like to watch them. I have been forced to watch more than I ever would have considered through one of my jobs, which is I do video describing for the blind. And so I'm describing a lot of the independent films, and a lot of them are horror films.
Yeah.
So I've become a little more familiar with the genre. But you're not gonna find me in the movie theater.
Well, I enjoy watching you on the big screen in the horror movies anyway. That's good enough for me.
I love making them. Yes. It's just not I don't want to be scared.
Well, with John Carpenter, he had some advice for you because you started on stage, and stage means you have to project yourself to the person in the back row. John had some advice for you when you first did The Fog. What was that?
Actually, it wasn't The Fog. It was Someone's Watching Me.
Oh yeah, Someone's Watching Me. Sorry.
And it was the scene where Sophie tells Lauren Hutton's character that she's gay.
Yep.
And we shot the first take, and John came over. He said, "That was great. Do less."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, do less? He said, "Yeah, just do less." And it was, I've told the story many times, but it was the proverbial light bulb. It's like, oh, I get it. Let's bring it down, because we're working on film. We're not on a big stage, and we're not even on television doing a comedy. We're dealing with delicate stuff, and let the camera do the work.
And then, of course, you work with George Romero in my favorite story, The Crate, in Creepshow, and he said just the opposite. No, I want you to be over the top.
He sort of put paid to John's philosophy. But, she was a different character. And it was a comic book, it was a very stylized way of working. So it worked for George to go the other direction.
You play such a great character in that episode. Just call me Billy. Everybody does. You have to work with so many great actors in that one thing. Hal Holbrook, Fritz Weaver.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, and we had a good writer.
Stephen King. You can't go wrong. George Romero, Stephen King, Hal Holbrook, Fritz Weaver, and of course Adrienne Barbeau. It's a hit no matter what happens.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about Swamp Thing. That was Wes Craven. What was it like working with him?
Swamp Thing was not an easy shoot. It was under budgeted. The producers kept pulling the budget out from under Wes. he really had his hands full. He was having to make all kinds of changes, cuts, considerations to get, to get what he wanted on screen.
Yes.
So, and it was, we were working 14 hours a day in the swamps with the chiggers and the ticks and the gators and all of that. So it just wasn't an easy shoot. It was wonderful working with Wes, but he really had his hands full. And we didn't really get a chance to do anything but film and, maintain a great respect for each other. But I didn't become close with him the way George, I fell in love with George, and we became very, very close friends over the years. And of course, John.
Yeah.
So Wes was, it was, he took what started out as a wonderful, wonderful screenplay, and because of the financial considerations and there was one day when we showed up on the set and we didn't have a makeup trailer because they hadn't paid the rent. There was that kind of stuff going on.
Wow.
And a couple of the crew members ended up in jail. So it was really hard. And the fact that it came out and was as successful as it was and as beloved as it is a real tribute to Wes, working under just brutal conditions.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I had Dee Wallace on the show not that long ago, and she worked on Last House on the Left, and she said basically the same thing. There was no budget, and everybody shared one trailer back then. So she said she had the same experience. Poor Wes had no budget, but again, he pulled it out and made a great movie.
Yeah.
And same thing with Swamp Thing. I mean, it's a classic. And I love the fact that he takes the little amount of money that he has and makes the most out of it.
Yes.
It shows. I want to go back to The Fog because I love this because, you were, doing TV or doing stage. Then you met John Carpenter, did Someone's Watching Me. And then he goes, I have this role for you. Her name is Stevie Wayne. She's a DJ. Here's the script. What was your initial reaction?
This was late 1978. I was going to see The China Syndrome and Coming Home, and I was fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment, and I was supporting Roe v. Wade, and he handed me a horror film. It's like, but I mean, it's not socially significant, So it took me a while to get my head around it, but I'm sure glad I did.
Well, I always thought back then that you would have made a great DJ, which is ironic because in the 1990s, you became a talk show host and a weekly book reviewer for KABC Talk Radio.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I just sort of fell into that, I think, because the radio host, Peter Tilden, I don't know, somehow we started talking about books, and I am a voracious reader. I mean, I read nonstop, I mean, I just am always reading. And so, I don't know, we just started talking about it and whether or not we had something in common in terms of the kinds of things we read or what. He said, listen, why don't you do this? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to because I love this one and I don't think this one's well written. And so I ended up being a book reviewer for whatever radio station that was.
KABC, it says. Well, it's a great combination.
I thought that's what it was. I was a host. I was a co-host of a morning talk show on camera with Regis at one point, and then went on with Steve Edwards, and I love that. And so that may have just sort of filtered into the let me come be a book reviewer on your show.
Well, whoever said that you should be on the radio must have seen The Fog because you have that smooth, sultry voice. that role was, I mean, I know he actually wrote it for you, but that role definitely is you. I can't picture anybody else in that role as Stevie Wayne. Now, you said you have never played a victim. Is that intentional?
I don't know if it's intentional. Well, I'm sure it's intentional in the latter part of my career when I could pick and choose, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it was intentional in the beginning, it may have been intentional on someone else's part because I just wasn't seen as a victim, you know. I did one TV movie where I played sort of a bimbo. And I don't know, I watch it and I think, oh, I can see you acting, Adrienne, you know.
You know what, you got to start somewhere, though.
Well, but I mean, I tend to, even Fiddler, I played the daughter that left the family and went off to Siberia with the revolutionary. I tend to play strong women. I come from a line of strong women, the Armenians.
Well, in 1994, you made a movie in Moscow with rats that were supposedly trained. What happened with that? How can anything possibly go wrong?
Okay, now that one I've got to send all your fans to my memoir. There are worse things I could do.
Yes. Okay.
Because I do take great enjoyment out of the chapter that I wrote about the rat movie. And more than that, I'm not going to give you too much. Maybe I'll tell you about, I did have one scene where the rats had to swarm all over me. Well, the only way they could get these rats to swarm all over me was, the only thing the rats were attracted to was fish. So before every take of this scene, they took fish heads and squeezed the juice all over my gown. And then the rats would swarm. So that's the kind of thing you can read about in There Are Worse Things I Could Do.
And where can people find that book? I'm sure Amazon.com.
It's on Amazon, yeah. Actually, the Kindle version, which I updated maybe a year or two ago, is available through booksbenimble.com. It's the ebook, and so they'll find it if they really want to.
What prompted you to write your memoir? There Are Worse Things That I Could Do.
It's sort of a long story. I'll try and truncate it. I lost my best friend to breast cancer in 1998. She was a film editor, and we had met on the first day of school for my older son, Cody. And about 4 years later, I took my boys, the twins, to the first day of preschool. And a woman came on the campus who looked just like my deceased friend. And I was so taken aback that I sort of reacted. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, yeah, you just look like a friend of mine. And she said, "Oh, who?" I said, "Well, you wouldn't know her. She was a film editor, and she passed away from breast cancer." And this woman who looked just like my friend said, "Well, I'm a film editor and I have breast cancer. We could be best friends." And it was sort of life-changing in that I immediately said, "Let's go have coffee," because I was, I didn't know what this meant. And in the course of that first coffee, she talked to me about a writing class that she had attended for actors. I think she had been to a presentation that all of these actors, well-known actors, who were attending this writing class gave. And as soon as she said it, I thought, this is Suzanne, my friend, Suzanne's message to me that I'm supposed to go and take this class. Mm-hmm. I'd never written before. I'd kept a journal, but I'd never written before. It never crossed my mind. Well, it turned out that the woman teaching the class was also a Broadway musical actress. We'd been in New York at the same time. She lived about a half a mile from me, and I started taking the class. And after about 6 months of bringing in homework assignments, she said, "I think you should contact an agent because you've got a book here. And that was the memoir.
Wow. How'd you make the transition from memoir to fictional vampire novels?
Vampire novels. I was approached. I was approached by a friend of my teachers, who was a well-known, prolific science fiction, romance, horror novelist in the UK, and he said, "You know, I love the book, but I really think you should write something for your horror genre fan base." And I said, well, I'm not so sure I could write a plot, you know. I mean, I knew the stories from the book. I lived them. And he said, I'll help you. So together we pounded out an idea and pitched it to St. Martin's Press. And they said, we'll take that one and another one, you know. And so I ended up writing probably 80% of it. He structured it and you know, brought the characters in, and that was Vampires of Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And then he had to remove himself from writing the second project. So I wrote that one alone. And then the Books Be Nimble said, listen, I'd like to publish both of these as ebooks, and would you give me a third one as a, you know, for Kindle as an ebook? And so that was Make Me Dance. So that's the trilogy. And the third one actually takes place in a horror convention, or at a horror convention.
All right. And again, you can find that
wealth of treasure trove of, you know, weird stuff that you can write about.
Oh, I can imagine. I've been to a lot of these conventions. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, you don't like watching horror movies. Do you like to read horror novels?
No, in fact, I don't think I had ever read a vampire novel before we. Oh, no, that's not true. George Romero had given me a book by George R.R. Martin back in 1983 or 84 called Fever Dream, F-E-V-R-E Dream, because George was hoping to get it produced. And I loved it. I really loved it. I have a first edition in my cupboard, and I've gone back and read it several times. But that was the only vampire novel I'd ever read up until that time. And now, no, I read John Sandford, I read Michael Connelly, I read series detective novels, every Swedish detective, you know, crime novelist that's ever been written, Joe Nesbo, Henning Mankell, you know, I love those things. But we created a character who was a 400-year-old Armenian vampire who happened to be a scream queen and the head of a small film production company in Los Angeles. And the members of her clan, the vampire members of her clan, were all A-list Hollywood actors like Orson Welles and Mary Pickford and Robert Downey Jr. and Elvis. And so that's the direction we went. And so that took me into vampires.
Very good. Do you think that any of these movies will be adapted for the big screen? Or sorry,
you
any
know,
of these books?
Harrison Smith, who produced Death House and quite a few other horror films, has optioned it. We wrote a screenplay together, and we're still trying to find the right home for it. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but we'll see.
So the rights have been optioned, now you just have to wait.
Well, Harrison, I mean, you know, yeah. He's looking to try and set it up somewhere. So if anybody's interested, they can contact Harrison.
You're watching this right now. I want to see that movie. Yeah. I want to see that movie.
That was for Love Bites. That was for my second novel. Yeah.
Right. Well, before I go on to your voiceover work, there's one movie I do not want to overlook, because it looks like you were having a blast filming Cannonball Run. I love that movie, and it had so many great people in that movie. Did you find that there was a lot of egos on the set, or was it a fun set? It seemed like everybody was having a great time.
I think everybody else is having a great time.
Oh, obviously, it wasn't as fun for you, huh?
There was a lot of extracurricular imbibing going on. And I mean, I loved working with all of them. You know, Dom DeLuise was a prince, and Dean was hysterically funny.
Yeah.
And I loved working with all of them. But it was early on in my career, and I was very serious about what I was doing, you know, and nobody else was. So, you know, good and bad, good and bad. If you watch the outtakes, no, if you watch the final outtakes, the ones under the credits,
okay,
and you'll see, you know, I think Bert's slapping Dom or something, and you'll see everybody else laughing, and the look on my face is, I didn't think it was appropriate, let's say. You know.
All right. So,
but what can I tell you?
But yeah, it was a fun movie. But yeah, at that time you're like, you know what? I'm a serious actor, and what's going on here? So
not that I was a serious actor, but I mean, I wanted to do a good job, you know,
oh, yeah.
and I wanted to make it funny and anyway,
yeah.
that's another story.
I'm sorry.
I talk about it in the book.
Okay, well, again,
plus,
by her memoir.
It was a really bad. It was really a, what do I want to say? Not traumatic. We had 2 terrible accidents on that set.
Oh, okay.
One that left one of the stunt women paralyzed from the neck down.
Wow.
And so, you know, that colored a lot of it too.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll go on to the voiceover work, because
okay.
How did you land the role of Catwoman for the Batman cartoons?
Got a call from my agency, went in and, you know, did a 30-second audition. They had maybe 6 lines to read, and I was not a Batman aficionado. I mean, I had never watched it. I knew Eartha Kitt because I grew up listening to her song Uskadar on my grandparents' 78 record player. But I just, you know, did it the way I thought she should sound, and they hired me. It was great. Yeah. It was a great job.
Well, you also do voiceover work for video games, such as Mad Max and Halo 4. My favorite, though, I have to say, is Hitman. So tell me your experience working on that particular game.
You're one of the few people who has ever spoken to me about Hitman. One of my more recent ones and more popular ones is Fallout 76. I'm so proud of that one. And I think I did another one after that. But Hitman was, well, they just put me in the booth and said, you know, be as vile as you can. I've never seen it. I've never heard it. I don't know anything about it, but obviously you do. And,
did they give you a script, or they just said, say whatever comes out of your mouth?
I think there may have been words on the page, but they wanted me to go, you know, take that and run with it.
So right now during the pandemic, is that what you're doing mostly, is voiceover work?
Yes, yeah, voiceover work. And I've been very fortunate in that one of my sons is on his way to becoming a very successful music producer. He has his studio in what used to be my gym and my library. He's taken over my house, but he has his studio here at the house, and I'm able to do a lot of the voiceover work, especially the recording for the blind, right here at the house.
All right.
And the rest, I go into a studio. I'm the only one there. I wear my mask when I walk in. They've sprayed everything down. I don't see anybody. You know, I just read the lines and then leave. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah.
You have a very talented family.
I do, and I'm just blessed. William Van Zandt is the record producer. He's produced for and I never get all these words right. Ty Dolla $ign, TMZ Melly. Am I right with that?
I think you're right.
Nicki Minaj, I think he just did something that she was on. He's just, he's only been out of college a year, but I can't remember all the other names. Moses. Anyway, because it's not, it's a whole other approach to music than what I grew up with. But he had one of his tunes was used on an HBO series just recently. And so William's doing great. His twin brother, Walker Van Zandt, is a fashion designer. He is designing men's streetwear. He's finishing his last semester at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising down in LA. But at the same time, he has his own brand, M.U.M. For Mine Until Morning. And he's selling. And then, of course, Cody Carpenter, who,
You're one proud mama.
Cody gifted. I mean, there's just no question about that. We have nothing to do with that. So.
Well, like I said, you're one proud mama, and you should be.
I am. I'm very proud of all three of my boys. Now,
I know that right now, because of the pandemic, this is probably not happening, but do these musicians that you spoke about, do they come to the house in your studio, your former gym, and they record there, or does he go out to another studio and record with them? In normal times,
he sometimes goes to their studios.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come here.
Okay.
Since the pandemic and since the quarantine, the first, I'd say 2 months, he just basically shut down and was just doing whatever he could do electronically. I think he was working with somebody in Amsterdam or something. And more recently, as long as they've been tested and they, everybody wears masks when they walk in, and they, and I'm on my way. Hopefully, I have another. I'm on my way to New Zealand to do a guest episode of a new Netflix series that was in production a year ago and had to shut down because the lead actor tore his ACL. But they just contacted me and said, we think we're ready to go. We'll have you come in and quarantine for 2 weeks, and then we'll shoot the episode. So I'm being really careful. I don't want to,
Nope.
I don't want anything to damage that, because I want to get back to New Zealand.
Have you ever been there before?
Well, I was there to shoot originally and loved it. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, the reason I ask, I've heard nothing but great things, because I've spoken with actresses and actors that worked with Peter Jackson, and he films all of his movies in that area, and they loved it out there.
Yes. I have to say that every person I met there was more gracious and kind and caring than the one before, as is evidenced in the way that they responded to the pandemic.
Exactly.
She said, "This is what we're doing." Everybody did it. They're COVID free. I mean, it was, but the people are just lovely.
I'm hoping one day to get out there just for a vacation. I would love to visit that part of the world.
Oh, yes.
Maybe
it's
one
gorgeous.
day.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
Now, you're the third guest that I've had that's worked on a soap opera, because I've had Dee Wallace and I've had Dawn Cody. And tell me what it was like, your experience working on General Hospital.
Well, it was a very different experience, and not one that I would it's not my favorite art form. And the reason I say that is twofold, I guess, really. I mean, one is that, you know, and especially now when budgets have been cut so much, there's absolutely no rehearsal. No rehearsal. You show up, maybe you block it once for the cameras, and then you do it. And, you know, there's no rehearsal. What really was disconcerting for me is that I was hired to play a role that was described as such and such and such and such. You know, she was a mentor, she was, you know, blah, 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 blah. And after I'd been there about a month, the producers approached me and said, we really want to make you something else, you know. She turned out to be a villain and a killer and a kidnapper and everything else. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. How do I justify these actions with what I've done before as an actor? Yep. And, you know, when you take a role in a film or a television series or on stage, you know what the character is, you know what the arc is, you know, and this was just so disconcerting, I guess would be the way to say it. It was great being able to work here in town and be with the boys and you know, not working long hours and things like that. But it's just a different approach to acting, and it's not my favorite.
It's funny that you say that because Dee and Dawn both said the same thing. They said the actors are learning their lines while in the makeup chair. Yes. They have no chance to rehearse or even go over them, and they just go on there and
nothing.
Dawn had to wing it most of the time. She said, I really never had a chance to memorize my lines. So you're not far off from what everybody else is saying.
And then if you're unfortunate enough to work with someone who didn't care about her lines and just decided to, you know, say whatever she wanted and do whatever she wanted, you're really up the creek, you know.
Nice way to put it. Well, you've been in the business for so long. So what advice would you have for up and coming actors?
Study.
Yes.
Study. Get into therapy or meditation or whatever it is that you find that helps you know the most about yourself that you can, because this is what you're presenting. This is what you have to work with. The more you can understand who you are and why you react in certain ways and all of those things, I think the more you bring to the business. Certainly the more you bring to an audition, but study, you know. I was just reading an interview with Leslie Uggams, who was talking about being on stage in this day and age and how different it is when the young people don't have the same sense of professionalism as we all had in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I did a tour of Pippin 3 years ago, I guess it was, 3 or 4 years ago, where I was doing the Andrea Martin role, singing upside down, hanging from the trapeze. You know, I had a great time. But I never knew who was going to be on stage at night because they had these things called personal days. And the actors just, you know, called in and said, no, I'm not coming in tonight. You know, it was like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, I did 2.5 years of Fiddler and I missed a half of one performance, I think, because I got laryngitis. You didn't take, you were professional. You didn't, you know, you took care of yourself because you had to be on stage every night. You took care of this and all of that. So I would say, and especially to actors who are coming at it from another venue because they've become celebrities first, because they've become known for something else, but they really do want to succeed at their craft, then study, and do, go off and find the equity waiver company or the student filmmaker who's not going to pay you anything, but is going to give you an opportunity to learn your craft.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a great...
sounds like an old lady, but it's...
I'm going to sound like an old man for a second, because I agree with you. And that's why I think these karaoke shows like American Idol and The Voice are making it too easy for some of these kids to be stars, that they have a lack of work ethic. They're like, oh, it's so easy to go on a show and become an instant celebrity. And then these people that are on YouTube and they have like 5 million hits, so they're like, oh, I'm a star now. No, you're not. And that's why I think it's, in a way, the media or the social media, the way it is now, is kind of ruining greatness. There's really no greatness now. People are settling for mediocrity.
I think there is a difference between being a star and being a celebrity.
Yes.
And a celebrity could become a star if they, as you say, if they had the work ethic and they, approach the material from that point of view. A star is a celebrity by dint of their talent and their stardom. And there's a difference between the two.
Yeah. I mean, like the days of having a band be a 20-year overnight success. Now they go on some show, all right, I'm a star. No, you're not. I mean, they might be popular for about 20 minutes, like Andy Warhol, your 15 minutes of fame, but it's not going to last. But, I mean, I want to see everybody succeed, but when you have the lack of work ethic, that would get on my nerves too, after everything you've been through, how you came up, all the hard work you've done. And you brought up Pippin. I want to talk about that because that sounds very interesting. It's similar to Cirque du Soleil. Tell me about that.
Well, Pippin was originally done in I was on Broadway with Fiddler, so I don't know if it was in the early 1970s or the late 1960s, 69 or 70, 71, with John Rubinstein playing Pippin. And it was reconceived in 2013 to incorporate, they weren't specifically Cirque du Soleil acrobats. Most of them came from, I think, Les Doigts de la Main. I can't remember the name of the acrobatic company, but most of them came from Canada. All brilliant, brilliant acrobats. Not circus performers, but acrobats. Yeah. And oops, I think one of the dogs just walked in or poked his nose in. I'm gonna have to get off pretty soon.
Okay.
And it's a brilliant show. The production that we did the national company, and took it to Amsterdam and Japan and all over the States. John Rubinstein, instead of playing Pippin, played Charlemagne. And there's another example. John toured with Pippin for 2.5 years. He missed one performance. Mm-hmm. Allergies had just taken his throat one night, and he was devastated, but it was a great show. I love doing it. I mean, it's not often that, a 71-year-old gets to go 15 feet up in the air and hang upside down and twirl around all the while she's singing. And it's a great role. It's a great role. So,
well, I know you have to go soon, so I have one last question for you. Tell my viewers what's next and where can people find you?
What's next? Actually, I don't know when this is going to air, but on August 1st on Showtime, a film that I did a cameo in, but it's a lovely, lovely film and should be seen. It was Rance Howard's last film. Rance Howard and Robbie Benson and Clint Howard and Michael Worth, who directed it and wrote it. And it's called Appleseed, and that will be premiering on Showtime on August 1st, and then it'll be streaming on all of the, streaming channels. I have a golf comedy, which just started streaming last month. Oh no, still this month, the beginning of July, starring Dan Lauria and K-pop star Amber Liu, called The Eagle and the Albatross. And it's a very, very funny comedy in which I have one of my favorite bedroom scenes. I don't look good, but it's a good bedroom scene. And then another film coming out, a horror film, but it is a politically conscious horror film about fracking. And the horrors of fracking, what happens when we start messing with Mother Earth. That's called Unearth, and that stars Mark Blucas and myself and PJ Marshall. And that will be airing virtually, or premiering virtually, at the Fantasia Film Festival out of Montreal, and then also another one in Europe, in England. I want to say it's the Horror Fest, but I'm not sure. Sorry, are you hearing the music producer going down into his studio? Somebody open the door. And then those are there are three more in the can. I don't know where they are in terms of post-production. And then if you haven't watched AJ and the Queen on Netflix, I would love to have you watch at least the third episode, because it's a really nice character that I play, and I loved working with RuPaul. So that's on Netflix right now, and hopefully heading off to New Zealand to do this. I'm not going to name it yet because it's and so that's what's going on.
All right, and where can people find you? Like
this I can tell you. I've got to pull up my notes because I always remember all of my different. They can find me on Facebook at 4 A Barbeau.
Okay.
All lowercase. They can find me on Twitter at A Barbeau. They can find me on Instagram at Adrienne_Barbeau. And I handle all my social media myself, which is why sometimes my website isn't up to date, but I think I just updated it. And that's www.abarbeau.com.
Okay, very good. Adrienne, it was an honor to have you on the show. Thank you very much for being on. I want to thank my Uncle John for helping set this up.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
I look forward to many, many more projects, many more movies, many more TV shows with you in them. So keep up the great work, Adrienne.
Thanks. Okay.
That wraps up another episode of The Claw's Corner, the Zoom edition. It was my pleasure to have the talented and beautiful dancer, actress, singer, author, and voiceover actor, Adrienne Barbeau. I would also like to thank you, the viewer, for watching. Enjoy your day, everyone.